The storm hit just as the sun went down, hard, relentless, the kind that makes even city lights fade to gray. Inside a quiet police precinct, Officer Daniel Harris stood accused of a crime he didn't commit. The air was thick with suspicion, the kind that stings worse than rain. But while men argued, searched, and pointed fingers, one soul stayed silent, a German shepherd named Rex. He didn't bark. He didn't move. He simply sat there, guarding a small, tattered doll in the corner of the evidence room. Everyone thought he was confused, just a dog, clinging to a child's toy. But his eyes said something else, sharp, alert, almost pleading. He was waiting for someone to listen. No one did. Not yet. That night, as Daniel walked out of the precinct, stripped of his badge, Rex watched him go, ears low, tail still, a silent promise burning in his gaze. He wasn't guarding a toy. He was guarding the one secret that could save his partner's life. The rain began before sunset, sweeping across the city in cold, slanted sheets. Outside the precinct, lightning clawed through the dark sky, and thunder rumbled like a warning no one wanted to hear. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered against damp uniforms and tired faces. The air smelled of coffee, gun oil, and tension. Officer Daniel Harris stood at his desk, his badge glinting faintly beneath the harsh light. 15 years on the force had carved deep lines into his face. Not of age, but of loyalty. Of long nights spent chasing truth through the city's broken streets. Tonight, though, that loyalty was the very thing being questioned. He barely heard the first whisper. Internal affairs is here. The words slid through the room like a cold draft. Officers exchanged quick glances over paperwork and half-empty mugs. Conversations died mid-sentence. Somewhere in the distance, a phone rang. No one answered it. Then, the door opened. Two men in black coats stepped in, their expressions carrying the chill of authority. Behind them, Captain Reynolds followed, his jaw set tight. Daniel straightened instinctively, but something in Reynolds's eyes made his stomach drop. Officer Harris, the taller investigator began, you're being questioned in connection with the disappearance of a key piece of evidence from the Wilkes kidnapping case. Daniel blinked. What are you talking about? A USB drive, the man continued, flipping open a folder. It contained a recorded confession from the suspect. It was logged in under your custody. It's gone. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to fall silent. Daniel's mind reeled. He remembered logging the evidence, signing off every line, sealing it in the chain of custody bag. He had done everything by the book. He always did. That's impossible, he said quietly. I secured it myself. Reynolds stepped forward, his jaw voice was steady, but his eyes wavered. Dan, they ran a full audit. The drive disappeared between your shift and the morning evidence check. There's no trace, your signature's the last one on record. The words cut deeper than any bullet ever could. Around them, the other officers avoided eye contact. Men he'd trained beside, bled beside, suddenly found the floor fascinating. In their silence, he felt the sting of betrayal. Not loud, not cruel, but heavy and suffocating. Daniel turned to his desk, where his partner, Rex, lay resting. The German shepherd lifted his head, ears pricking at the tension. His amber eyes searched Daniel's face, reading his unease the way only he could. He rose, silent but alert, tail still, gaze fixed on the strangers in black. Rex, Daniel murmured softly. It's okay, boy. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. One of the investigators motioned toward the evidence locker. "We'll need to search your workstation. Standard procedure." Daniel nodded numbly and stepped aside. They combed through drawers, papers, files, every inch of his small, organized space. Rex's low growl vibrated softly in the background, a quiet protest. One of the men flinched when he made eye contact with the dog. "Control your animal," the man snapped. "He's not an animal," Daniel said, voice tight. "He's my partner." Reynolds cleared his throat. "Let's keep things professional." Minutes stretched into an eternity. Nothing was found. Not the USB, not a clue. Yet when the search ended, Daniel could feel the judgment hanging over him like the storm cloud outside. In law enforcement, suspicion was a stain that didn't wash off easily. The investigator finally closed his folder. "Officer Harris, you are to surrender your badge and firearm pending internal review. You're suspended effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. For a heartbeat, Daniel couldn't breathe. His badge, the symbol of every promise he'd ever made, now felt like lead in his hands. He unclipped it, setting it on the desk beside his weapon. The metallic sound echoed through the room, louder than thunder. Rex barked once, sharp and urgent. It was the sound of protest, of loyalty refusing to accept what humans decided. "Easy, boy," Daniel whispered again, but his voice cracked. His hand lingered on Rex's head, fingers threading through thick fur, grounding himself in the only trust that hadn't shattered. As he turned to leave, the precinct that had been his second home now felt like enemy ground. He could feel the weight of eyes on his back, some pitying, others doubtful. Betrayal had 1,000 faces, and all of them looked away when he passed. At the door, Reynolds called out softly, "Dan, I'll do what I can, but it doesn't look good." Daniel stopped. The storm outside roared again, wind howling through the narrow windows. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. He gave a small nod instead, an acknowledgement of both gratitude and grief. Rex followed as far as the leash allowed, body pressed forward, refusing to sit. His handler, another officer, held him back. The dog barked again, a deep, throaty sound filled with confusion and defiance. Daniel turned one last time. His eyes met Rex's. In that single look was a world of understanding. 15 years of partnership, of hunts through dark alleys, rescues in collapsed buildings, quiet nights spent side by side. And now, separation. "Stay," Daniel whispered, voice barely audible. "Stay, boy." Rex didn't move, but his tail lowered. His chest rose and fell fast, as if he understood the injustice, but could do nothing to stop it. Lightning flashed across the glass, casting long shadows across the room. The shadow of doubt, the shadow of loss. Daniel walked out through the rain, each step heavier than the last. The precinct door shut behind him with a metallic click. Final, almost cruel. Inside, Rex sat at the door long after he was gone. The leash trembled in the handler's grip, but the dog didn't resist anymore. He simply stared at the rain-soaked doorway, ears flicking at every distant echo of thunder, waiting for a partner who would not return that night. In that small, silent corner of the precinct, beneath the hum of flickering lights and the murmur of uneasy officers, a bond was breaking. not from choice but from circumstance. And though no one noticed, one German shepherd's steady eyes followed the door long after it closed, as if he could see something the rest of them could not. The storm raged on, but the greater storm, the one of doubt and betrayal, had only just begun. The storm had calmed by morning, but the precinct felt heavier than ever. Overnight, whispers had turned into rumors, and rumors had hardened into quiet judgment. The investigation room, once a place of procedure and order, was now a battlefield of doubt and noise. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering every few seconds, as if even the electricity shared in the unease. Officers moved quickly, their boots echoing against the tiled floor. The air smelled faintly of metal, wet uniforms, and the stale bitterness of too much coffee. Every drawer was open, every cabinet emptied. Laptops, paperwork, and evidence bags were spread across tables like puzzle pieces that refused to fit. Captain Reynolds stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back, watching the chaos unfold. His voice, usually calm, carried a hard edge. "Check everything again. Every log, every shelf, every tape. If that USB is still in this building, I want it found before noon." The officers nodded and continued searching. The room filled with the sound of papers shuffling and boxes being opened, then closed again. And there, in the corner of the room, half hidden by the leg of a metal table, sat Rex. He wasn't supposed to be there. Officially, the K9 unit had been benched for the day. But somehow, Rex had slipped through the hands of the junior officer assigned to keep him in the kennel. He'd padded silently back into the room, ignoring every order and command. Now, he sat still. Too still. His gaze fixed on something no one else had noticed. A small, worn-out doll, its fabric torn and faded with time. The doll looked ordinary. Button eyes dull, one arm hanging loosely by a few frayed threads. It was the kind of thing most people would overlook. But Rex didn't. Every time someone walked near it, his ears twitched. When an officer reached to move it, Rex's head lifted sharply, a low rumble sounding from his chest. "Hey, what's up with him?" one officer muttered, hesitating mid-motion. "Probably just stressed," another replied. "Dog's been acting weird since Harris got suspended." "Yeah, poor thing doesn't understand what's happening," someone else added with a sigh, before going back to rummaging through files. But Reynolds noticed. He'd worked with K9 units long enough to know that a German shepherd doesn't act without reason. He walked over slowly, hands still clasped behind his back, and crouched near Rex. "What is it, boy?" he murmured softly, respectful. Rex's tail didn't move. His body was tense but calm, eyes locked on the doll as if it might move. His gaze was sharp, intelligent, focused, nothing like the confused restlessness others assumed. Reynolds frowned. "That belonged to the Wilkes kid, right? The little girl, Emma." "Yeah," one forensic officer replied, not looking up. "She carried it during the rescue, logged as personal property, non-evidentiary." Reynolds's eyes softened. "Then why are you guarding it, boy?" Rex blinked once, slow and deliberate, then lowered his head onto his paws again, never breaking eye contact with the doll. Around them, officers kept working. No one paid attention to the quiet corner. But if they had, they might have seen something strange. The faintest twitch in Rex's ears every time someone mentioned the missing USB. As if the word itself meant something to him. Hours passed. The storm outside cleared, sunlight spilling through the blinds in narrow, pale strips that fell across the cluttered tables. Dust hung in the air, turning the beams into ribbons of gold. Rex's shadow stretched long against the wall. In that stillness, he became something more than a dog. A sentinel. A silent witness in a room full of people too busy looking for answers to see the truth standing right in front of them. At one point, a rookie named Tom, young, impatient, too eager to prove himself, walked over and tried to pick up the doll. "Let's clear this junk off the table," he said, reaching down. Before his fingers even touched the fabric, Rex lifted his head sharply, teeth flashing in warning. A deep growl rolled from his throat, low and steady, like distant thunder. Tom jumped back. "Whoa, easy, boy. What's your problem?" Reynolds turned instantly. "Leave it," he ordered. Tom hesitated. "Sir, it's just a doll." "I said leave it." The young officer backed off, muttering under his breath, eyes wary. Reynolds watched Rex for another long moment, then stood and addressed the room. "Take a 15-minute break. Clear your heads." As the others filed out, Rex remained unmoving. Reynolds lingered by the doorway, hands on his hips, eyes soft, half curiosity, half understanding. He whispered, mostly to himself, "What do you see that we don't, partner?" The sound of the closing door left the room eerily quiet. The hum of fluorescent lights returned, faint but steady. Rex shifted his weight slightly, nose twitching. He lowered his snout closer to the doll and inhaled deeply. There, a familiar scent. Faint, but distinct. He remembered that smell from the night of the arrest. Fear, sweat, and the metallic tang of guilt. Something inside the doll made him uneasy. Not fear, instinct. The kind of instinct that had saved lives before. He lay down again, eyes locked on it, golden light flickering across his fur. Every sound made his muscles tighten. Every motion drew his attention, always returning to that single point of focus. To anyone else, it looked like he was simply staring. But if you looked closer, really looked, you'd see a quiet intelligence behind those eyes. A question. A truth waiting to be revealed. When the officers returned, the doll was still there. No one touched it again. They moved around it, like it carried some invisible boundary. Rex's presence demanded a respect they couldn't quite explain. The hours dragged into evening. Reports piled up. Still no USB, still no answers. And yet, in that corner, something about Rex's calm, unwavering watch began to unsettle even the skeptics. Finally, as the shift ended, Reynolds came back. He knelt beside the dog once more. "You've been here all day, haven't you?" Rex looked up briefly, then back at the doll. Reynolds sighed. "Maybe you're seeing something we can't." He gave the dog a gentle pat, then stood and turned off the light. The room fell into shadow. Only the faint glow from the hallway slipped through the glass, catching the outline of the dog and the doll. Rex didn't move. His breathing was steady, eyes half open but alert. The silence grew deep, almost sacred. Outside, the rain began again. Light this time, like a whisper. Inside, the dog kept watch, unblinking, patient. And though no human understood it yet, the truth had already chosen its guardian. The rain had stopped by the time Daniel pulled into his driveway, but the world still felt gray. The windshield wipers squeaked in slow, tired arcs, clearing away the last drops that clung stubbornly to the glass. His hands rested motionless on the steering wheel long after the engine died, as if letting go of it might make everything real. He sat there for several minutes, watching the soft flicker of the porch light. The house was quiet, its windows dim behind the curtains. Normally, Rex's silhouette would be visible in the passenger seat, head resting against the window, ready to burst from the car the moment the door opened. Tonight, the seat beside him was empty. That emptiness hurt more than the suspension itself. Finally, he opened the car door and stepped out. His boots crunched against the gravel, each step heavy, deliberate. He felt the weight of the city, the department, the rumors pressing down on him like an invisible storm that refused to pass. When the front door opened, Mara, his wife, stood in the frame. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. She didn't say anything at first, just stepped aside to let him in. The smell of dinner hung faintly in the air, untouched. A single plate sat on the table, still warm under a foil cover. She'd waited. He took off his jacket, hung it on the rack, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, full of things neither wanted to say. Then, softly, Mara broke it. They called. Daniel closed his eyes. Who? Reynolds, she said, her voice trembling just enough to betray her calm. He said you've been suspended, that there's an investigation. He nodded, staring at the floor. Yeah. Daniel. She hesitated, her fingers gripping the back of a chair. Tell me it isn't true. Please. He looked up at her. The pain in her eyes was worse than the accusation itself. It's not. You know me, Mara. I didn't do this. Her lips parted, as if to respond, but no words came. She turned away instead, her shoulders shaking. I want to believe you, she whispered, but they said your signature was the last one on that evidence log. Everyone's talking. I don't care what they're saying, he said sharply, frustration cracking through his calm. Then softer, I don't care. The truth will come out. But even as he said it, a small part of him wondered if the truth was enough. A small voice came from the hallway. Dad? Daniel turned. His son, Eli, stood there in pajamas, clutching a stuffed animal. Mom said you're not going to work anymore. Daniel forced a smile. For a little while, buddy. Just a break. Did you do something bad? The question pierced through him like a knife. He knelt slowly until he was eye level with his son. No, Eli. Daddy didn't do anything bad. Sometimes people make mistakes about others, and we just have to be patient until they see the truth. Eli frowned, trying to understand, then nodded and hugged him tight. Daniel held him, whispering, You be good for Mom, okay? When Eli went back to bed, the silence returned, deeper, heavier. Mara stayed by the sink, arms folded, looking out the window. Where's Rex? She asked quietly. They kept him at the station, Daniel replied, voice low. They think. I don't know what they think. He's probably in the kennels tonight. Her jaw tightened. He must be scared. Daniel's eyes drifted toward the window, where the faint glow of city lights shimmered through the drizzle. He's not scared, he said softly. He's probably wondering why I left him. He sat down at the table, staring at the untouched plate. His mind replayed the day. Flashing lights, whispers, the moment they took his badge. But one image refused to leave him. Emma, the little girl, clutching her doll in that cold interrogation room. He said it would keep me safe. He had brushed it off then, now. That memory scratched at him like a splinter beneath the skin. His hand tightened around his fork. Time, 400 Ms. Daniel, Mara said quietly, still looking out the window. They'll destroy you if this doesn't clear up. He didn't answer. His eyes were distant, unfocused. The shame, the confusion, the empty chair beside him where Rex should have been, pressed until his chest ached. He pushed the plate away, uneaten. I'm going to bed, he murmured. Mara didn't respond. Upstairs, the house was dark and quiet. But Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the framed photos on the wall. One from his academy graduation, one from his first case, one of him kneeling beside Rex. Both younger, both proud. He reached out, touching the glass. What are they doing to you right now, boy? He whispered. And as he sat there in the dim light, exhaustion pulled him into memory. A field of grass under the afternoon sun. Whistles and commands echoed in the air. A young Rex bounding across the training yard. All energy and determination. Daniel, still new to the K-9 unit, watching with a grin that felt foreign now. Let's see what you've got, rookie, the trainer had said, tossing a scent cloth toward Daniel. Rex found it in seconds, nose to the ground, tail stiff, focus unwavering. Looks like he picked you, Harris, the trainer laughed. Daniel had knelt down, extending his hand. Guess we're partners then. Rex licked his fingers and wagged his tail, and something inside Daniel shifted. A quiet certainty that this dog wasn't just a tool, but a soul who understood him better than most people ever would. Back in the present, that certainty burned again. If Rex could see the truth now, maybe he was the only one who still could. The clock ticked softly on the nightstand. Midnight. The city outside hummed with faraway traffic, but in this house only silence remained. Daniel lay down but didn't close his eyes. The missing USB, the doll, Rex, the whisper of betrayal in Reynolds's voice. He turned onto his side, staring at the empty space beside him. The absence of Rex's steady breathing felt wrong. In all their years together, he couldn't remember a single night without that presence. Stakeouts, rescues, long drives home. Now, the quiet was unbearable. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. Only questions, only doubt. And somewhere in that darkness, beneath the guilt and confusion, a flicker of instinct. The same instinct that once guided Rex, told him something about this story wasn't over. Not yet. Tomorrow, he would start looking for answers. But tonight, he faced the one thing he couldn't fight, or arrest, or control. The loneliness of being innocent, but alone. The precinct was quieter than usual that morning. The kind of heavy silence that follows scandal. The hum of computers and the occasional click of a coffee pot were the only sounds cutting through the emptiness. Every officer moved a little slower, spoke a little softer, as if afraid that any sudden noise might stir the ghosts left behind by the missing evidence and the absence of Daniel Harris. In the corner of the K9 unit room, Rex lay curled on the concrete floor beside a metal bowl of untouched food. The smell of meat filled the air, but he hadn't eaten since the night they'd taken his partner away. His eyes were open, unblinking, fixed on the same small spot, the doll that sat propped against the leg of an evidence table. The doll looked even smaller now in the bright light, its faded pink dress torn, its button eyes mismatched. To everyone else, it was just a remnant of a closed case, a child's toy with no relevance. But to Rex, it was something else entirely. His body tensed whenever someone got too close, and every instinct in him screamed to protect it. A young officer, Tom, the rookie from the day before, walked in holding a clipboard. He looked tired, his nerves frayed from the tense atmosphere gripping the department. "Hey, Mutt," he said under his breath, trying to sound confident. "You're not supposed to be here. That doll's not evidence. Let's get this mess cleaned up." He set the clipboard down and crouched, reaching out to grab the doll. Before his hand even touched it, Rex moved. A low, deep growl rolled from his chest, steady and sharp like a warning shot. The sound vibrated through the room, freezing Tom mid-motion. The dog's ears, were pinned back, teeth bared but controlled. A precise threat, not a reckless one. "Easy, boy," Tom said, hands raised, voice shaky. "It's just a doll." Rex didn't blink. He took one deliberate step forward, placing his body squarely between Tom and the toy. Muscles tight, eyes calm, focused, unwavering. "What the hell's gotten into him?" Tom muttered, backing away slowly. At that moment, Captain Reynolds entered the room. His coat hung loosely from his shoulders, his face shadowed by sleeplessness. He'd been dealing with the fallout of Daniel's suspension all week. Reporters, internal reviews, whispers from other departments. He didn't need another problem. "What's going on here?" he asked, tone clipped. Tom straightened quickly. "Sir, this dog's losing it. He growled at me for trying to move a damn doll." Reynolds's eyes narrowed. "You tried to take what?" "The little girl's toy. Emma's. It's been sitting there since the day of the arrest. I figured it should be sent back to evidence storage." Reynolds crossed the room slowly, the heels of his shoes tapping against the concrete. When he stopped beside Rex, the dog's body stiffened, but his growl faded. His eyes, sharp and alert, flicked toward the doll again, as if trying to communicate something. Reynolds crouched. He'd worked with enough K9 units to know the difference between confusion and intent. Rex wasn't panicked. He was deliberate. He studied the dog's posture, the stillness of his tail, the slow rhythm of his breathing. "You're guarding it," he said quietly. Tom frowned. "Guarding it? Sir, it's just a piece of cloth. Maybe he's associating it with the suspect's scent or something. You know how dogs get confused." Reynolds shook his head. "No, confused dogs bark. They pace, they look for direction." He nodded toward Rex. "He's not doing any of that. Look at him. He's thinking." Tom hesitated. "So, what do we do? He hasn't eaten. Should we call the vet?" Another officer, Mendez, entered holding a report. "Sir, maybe we should transfer him to another unit. A replacement handler could—" Reynolds cut him off sharply. "No one touches him, and no one moves that doll." Mendez blinked. "Sir?" Reynolds stood, his voice steady now but laced with something deeper. Intuition, maybe. Or the kind of faith born from years of seeing things logic couldn't explain. "I've seen dogs like him before," he said. ones that act when the rest of us can't see the full picture. You think he's malfunctioning, but he's doing exactly what he's trained to do. Protect what matters. Tom folded his arms. With all due respect, sir, it's a toy. Harris is gone. The case is done. What could possibly matter about that? Reynolds looked at him, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Maybe more than we think. He knelt again, placing a hand gently on Rex's head. The dog's fur was warm beneath his palm, muscles taut but contained. "You're not crazy, are you, boy?" he murmured. "You know something." Rex's ears twitched at the familiar tone. He blinked slowly, tension easing just slightly. Reynolds straightened and faced the others. "Let him be. Don't feed him if he doesn't want to eat. Don't move the doll. If he wants to guard it, let him guard it." Mendez frowned. "Sir, that doesn't sound like standard protocol." Reynolds's jaw tightened. Neither does accusing a man of a crime he didn't commit. Sometimes protocol doesn't get us truth. He turned toward the door, voice low but firm. Sometimes instincts see what logic can't. The men exchanged uneasy glances as the captain left. Rex stayed where he was, breathing quietly, head between his paws. The light from the window stretched across the floor, cutting a narrow path toward him and the doll. The room seemed to shrink around that single image. The loyal shepherd and the forgotten toy, both silent, both waiting. Hours passed. One by one, the officers left for their shifts, until the room was empty again. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the space, soft and constant. Rex finally lifted his head, gaze locked on the doll once more. He inched forward, nose brushing the fabric gently. There it was again, that faint, buried scent of metal, and something else, something he couldn't name. Somewhere deep inside, instinct whispered that this small, forgotten object held the key, not to food, not to safety, but to truth. And so he waited. The room slept. The world turned. But Rex did not move. The silent guardian kept his vigil, alone, yet certain, watching over the secret no one else could see. The following days blurred together in a haze of silence and shame. Daniel Harris kept to himself, avoiding the places and faces that once defined him. The badge that had once rested proudly on his chest now sat locked inside a drawer, out of sight, but never out of mind. Every time he passed by that drawer, he could almost feel its weight, as if it were pulling him down, reminding him of everything he'd lost. That evening, the city was steeped in twilight, the kind that seemed to hold its breath before night fully took over. Daniel sat alone in a dim cafe near the edge of town, nursing a cup of coffee gone cold. The rain had returned, tapping softly against the window, like an uninvited thought he couldn't shake. The doorbell chimed, and Officer Claire Bennett stepped inside. Her uniform looked crisper than he remembered, her expression steady, but her eyes tired. She scanned the room until she saw him sitting in the back corner. "Daniel," she greeted quietly as she approached. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't think you'd show." Claire took the seat across from him, setting down a worn folder wrapped in rubber bands. "You trained me, remember? You told me never to ignore my instincts. Well, my instincts tell me something's wrong about this whole thing." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "They've already made up their minds. The missing USB, the audit logs, the chain of custody, every damn thing points to me. What can I say that changes that? Maybe nothing, she admitted. But maybe there's something you've missed. Something small. Something they all overlooked. She slid the folder across the table. These are copies of the Wilkes case files. I pulled them from the archives before they locked everything down. Daniel hesitated before opening it. Inside were photographs, transcripts, and evidence lists, all familiar, yet heavy with new meaning. His eyes drifted over the crime scene photos, the abandoned warehouse, the suspect's arrest, the small handprint on the dusty floor. Emma's. He took a slow breath. It's strange, he murmured. When we found her, she wasn't crying. She just kept holding that doll. Wouldn't let anyone take it from her. Claire nodded. I remember. She said the suspect gave it to her. His brow furrowed. Right. He did. He said something weird when I cuffed him. He rubbed his temples, searching his memory. What was it? Something like... His voice dropped to a whisper, imitating the man's mocking tone. The truth's closer than you think, right under your nose. Claire's eyes narrowed. And you never figured out what he meant? He shook his head. At the time, I thought he was just taunting me. They all do that. I didn't think... He stopped mid-sentence. A faint image flashed in his mind. The interrogation room. The bright light overhead. The little girl sitting quietly in a chair, clutching her doll tight against her chest. He remembered kneeling down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You're safe now, sweetheart, he'd said. She'd looked up and whispered, almost afraid of being overheard. He said it would keep me safe. The words echoed now, louder, sharper, refusing to fade. Daniel leaned back, breath catching in his throat. Claire, what if it wasn't just a doll? She frowned. You think he hid something in it? Maybe. Maybe the confession. The USB wasn't big, small enough to hide inside fabric or stuffing. His heart began to race. And Rex, he's been guarding that doll ever since they locked down the evidence room. Claire's eyes widened. You think he knows? He gave a grim smile. If there's one thing I've learned, it's to trust his instincts more than most people's logic. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, distant but growing. The tension between them thickened with possibility, the fragile hope that this nightmare might still have a way out. Claire leaned in. If you're right, that doll could clear your name, but it's in the precinct. You can't just walk in. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then I'll go when they're not looking. She stared at him, incredulous. You're talking about breaking into a police building while you're under investigation. You'll destroy what's left of your career. He looked at her, voice low but unwavering. My career's already gone, but my partner's still there, and he's trying to tell me something. I can't sit here and do nothing. Claire hesitated, torn between duty and loyalty. You'll need access past the night guard. I can't be part of this. I'm not asking you to be, he said softly. Just don't stop me. She sighed, pressing a small key card into his hand. This never happened. Their eyes met. A silent agreement, born not of law, but of faith. Hours later, as night draped the city in darkness, Daniel parked 2 blocks from the precinct. The air was cold and damp, fog rising from the pavement like breath from an unseen animal. The streets were empty except for the faint hum of distant traffic. He stood outside the fence, staring at the building that had once felt like home. Now it loomed before him, like a fortress of betrayal. Sliding the keycard through the side entrance reader, he heard the faint click of the lock. The sound felt both thrilling and terrifying. Inside, the halls were dim, the hum of lights casting faint halos over the tiled floor. Every footstep seemed too loud, every shadow too long. He moved quickly, guided by muscle memory through corridors he'd walked 1,000 times before. As he reached the K9 unit room, his pulse quickened. He stopped outside the door, pressing his hand against the cold metal handle. Through the small window, he saw him. Rex, lying near the same corner, head resting on his paws, eyes half open but alert even in the darkness. The doll still sat in front of him. For the first time in days, Daniel smiled. A small, broken smile heavy with longing and relief. "Hey, partner," he whispered through the glass. "I'm here." He pushed the door open quietly. The hinges creaked, and Rex's ears perked instantly. Within seconds, the dog was on his feet, tail wagging, a soft whine escaping his throat. Daniel crouched, arms open. "Good boy. I missed you too." Rex pressed his head against Daniel's chest, whining softly. The bond between them was electric, an unspoken language of loyalty and love. Then Daniel's eyes shifted to the doll. He picked it up gently, feeling its weight in his hands. His fingers brushed over the stitching, and there, beneath the fabric, he felt something small, something hard. His breath caught. "It's here." But before he could do anything more, a red light blinked near the doorway. The silent alarm. Rex barked once. Sharp, warning. Daniel's pulse spiked. He grabbed the doll and stood. "We have to go, boy. Now." As they slipped through the hallway shadows, sirens began to wail faintly in the distance. Somewhere above them, footsteps echoed. The hunt had already begun. And for the first time since it all started, Daniel felt alive again. Not as an accused man, but as a detective, chasing the truth. The precinct at night was a different world, stripped of the constant chatter, the ringing phones, and the sharp command of voices. What remained was silence, broken only by the low hum of the fluorescent lights that flickered above like restless spirits. Daniel moved through the dim corridors with practiced care, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Every corner, every shadow felt familiar yet foreign, as if the building itself no longer recognized him. He passed the framed commendations on the wall, his own among them. His nameplate gleamed faintly under the cold light. Once a badge of honor, now a ghost of who he'd been. He reached the door to the K9 unit room and paused. The faint scent of disinfectant mixed with something warmer, something alive. Rex. Through the small window, he saw his partner lying in his usual spot, head resting on his paws, the doll still between his front legs. The stillness, the quiet loyalty, hit Daniel harder than he expected. He opened the door just enough to slip inside. The hinges groaned softly, and Rex's ears flicked up instantly. The dog was on his feet in seconds, muscles tensing before recognition bloomed in his eyes. His tail wagged once, twice, then stilled. Duty warred against instinct, love against training. "Hey, buddy," Daniel whispered, voice rough with emotion. "It's me." Rex's low whine broke the silence. He stepped forward hesitantly, then pressed his head against Daniel's chest. The man's hands found the familiar warmth of fur. Rough, grounding, real. "I missed you too," Daniel murmured, his throat tightening. "I shouldn't have left you." For a long moment, they stayed like that. Man and dog, two partners cut from the same cloth of loyalty and pain. The hum of the lights faded beneath the sound of quiet breathing. Then, almost imperceptibly, Rex pulled back. His gaze shifted toward the doll. He nosed it once, then looked up at Daniel, a soft whine rising from his throat. "What is it?" Daniel asked quietly. "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" Rex pawed gently at the doll, pushing it closer. His tail didn't move. His eyes were fixed, sharp, urgent. Daniel frowned, reaching to pick it up. The fabric was worn, frayed at the edges. The small dress stained from the day they'd found Emma. But it was heavier than it should have been. He turned it in his hands, thumb tracing the stitching. Then, there. A bump beneath the cotton lining. Something small and solid pressed back against his fingers. He froze. "No way!" Carefully, he pinched at the seam, pulling it slightly apart. His fingertips brushed something metallic, unmistakable. His pulse quickened. "It's here." Rex wagged his tail once, confirming. The truth crashed into Daniel like a wave. Every doubt, every sleepless night flashing through his mind. All this time they'd been searching, blaming him, and the truth had been right here, under the watch of the one soul who never doubted him. He let out a shaky laugh, part disbelief, part relief. "You knew, you clever boy. You knew." Rex let out a soft bark, low, affirming. Daniel's hands trembled as he tried to open the doll further. But before he could, a sharp beep pierced the silence. Then another. A red light blinked near the ceiling, the motion sensor. "Damn it!" he hissed under his breath. "They must have upgraded security." Rex's ears perked, tail stiff. The hum of the lights faded as the slow, pulsing alarm began to build, soft at first, then louder. Within seconds, the siren roared to life, echoing through the empty halls. Daniel's chest constricted. He had seconds, maybe less. He stuffed the doll under his jacket, mind racing. "Come on, boy," he whispered. "We have to go." Rex barked once, quiet but decisive, and moved instantly to his side. They ran. Down the hallway, footsteps echoing, the sterile scent of the precinct mixing with adrenaline and gun oil. Daniel's pulse pounded in rhythm with the alarm. He turned a corner too sharply, nearly colliding with a metal cart. Papers flew into the air like startled birds. Rex leapt over it effortlessly, landing in stride beside him. "Good boy," Daniel muttered breathlessly. The side exit loomed ahead, the red exit sign glowing faintly through the smoke-gray light. He slammed the door open, stumbling into the alley behind the building. The cold air hit like a slap, rain beginning to fall again in thin, relentless streaks. Rex bounded beside him, soaked, unbothered, pressed tight to Daniel's leg, every sense alert. Behind them, the alarm wailed louder, joined by distant shouts of officers. "Stop! Harris, stop right there!" Daniel didn't look back. The doll thumped softly against his chest with every step, the truth pressing closer to freedom. He reached the car parked 2 blocks down, fumbling with the keys. Rex circled him, scanning the shadows. When the engine roared to life, Daniel slammed the door and hit the gas. tires screeching against wet asphalt. Red and blue lights flared in the distance behind him. He glanced at the rearview mirror, breath ragged, eyes wild, not from fear, but from clarity. He finally understood. The doll wasn't just a child's comfort. It was the vault that held everything. The truth, the confession, the proof that he wasn't the man they said he was. And somehow, Rex had known all along. Rain hammered the windshield, thunder rolling low above the city. The road stretched ahead, slick, endless, cutting through the night like a promise. Daniel looked at Rex, sitting alert in the passenger seat, fur glistening beneath the dashboard light. "You were guarding the truth, weren't you?" he said softly. "You never stopped." Rex let out a small, content sound, eyes steady on the road ahead. For the first time in days, Daniel felt something he'd forgotten: hope. They disappeared into the storm, man and dog, fugitives not from justice, but for it. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, the precinct lights flickered like a warning. Too late to stop what had already begun. Rain swallowed the city whole. It wasn't the kind of gentle rain that washed things clean. It was the kind that punished, hammering the streets like the sky itself had turned against the earth. The wipers on Daniel's old sedan fought to keep up, slashing back and forth across the windshield as red and blue lights flared in the rearview mirror. The storm blurred everything: streetlights, reflections, even memories. But Daniel's focus stayed razor sharp. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles pale beneath the flashing glow. He wasn't running from justice. He was running toward it. Beside him, Rex sat alert, steady even as the tires hissed against wet asphalt. His fur slick from the rain, his golden eyes glinting whenever lightning lit the inside of the car. Daniel glanced at him between turns. "Hang in there, partner," he said, voice low, hoarse from adrenaline. "We're almost there." Rex gave a soft whine, the kind that meant trust. That was the thing about his dog. He didn't need explanations, didn't need proof. He believed, even when the rest of the world didn't. The sirens behind them grew louder, slicing through the roar of the storm. Daniel's chest tightened. The men chasing him weren't strangers. They were his brothers, men he'd shared patrols and near-death calls with. He could almost picture their faces, determined, angry, maybe even betrayed. He couldn't blame them. If the situation were reversed, he might be behind that wheel too, convinced he was chasing a criminal instead of a truth. He slammed the brakes and veered down a side street, tires skidding across slick pavement. Water splashed high as the car cut through puddles like an arrow through glass. The chase lights blurred behind him, briefly losing his trail. Daniel turned sharply again, pulling into the shadow of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place he'd once used during a stakeout. He killed the engine. "Time quaffsuma." Silence crashed in, broken only by the rhythmic drumming of rain on metal. Rex jumped out first as Daniel opened the door, landing on the wet ground with practiced grace. The two of them ran through the half-collapsed doorway, flashlight beams slicing the dark. Inside, the place smelled of rust, oil, and forgotten years. The storm outside echoed through broken roof panels, a haunting percussion that filled the vast emptiness. Daniel pulled the doll from inside his jacket and set it on an old workbench. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from urgency. "Okay," he breathed. "Let's find out what's really been worth all this pain." Rex stood close, ears twitching at every rumble of thunder. Daniel grabbed a utility knife, cutting carefully along the doll's seams. The old fabric peeled away slowly, revealing stuffing that crumbled like ash between his fingers. Then, his knife hit something hard. He paused. Heart pounding, he reached in and pulled out a small object wrapped in tape. A micro voice recorder, no larger than a matchbox. "There you are," he whispered. "You've been here the whole time." He peeled away the tape, revealing a scratched surface and a tiny play button. The device looked old, fragile, but intact. He pressed it. For a few seconds there was nothing but static. Then a faint click. A voice crackled through the speaker, warped and distant with time. "Name's not going on that report. You understand me?" Daniel froze. He knew that voice. It wasn't his. It was the suspect. Wilkes. The recording continued, rough but clear enough to make out the words. "They think the cop's clean, but he's not. He's the one who logged the evidence. Perfect fall guy. When this blows up, they'll go after him first." Daniel's breath caught. His fingers tightened around the recorder. "I'll make it look like he took it. All I need is a window of time. The girl's doll. Yeah, that'll do. Nobody checks toys." A dark chuckle followed, cold and satisfied. Rex growled low, the sound reverberating through the empty space. The voice went on. "They'll find his signature, his prints, his everything. And the one who told me to, static." The recording cut off. Daniel hit the button again. Nothing. Just a hollow hiss. The last sentence, the name of the person behind it all, was gone. "Damn it!" He slammed his fist against the table. "It's incomplete!" The rain outside intensified, drumming so hard against the roof, it almost drowned out his heartbeat. He paced, mind racing. The confession proved the setup, but without the name, it wasn't enough. The missing piece was still out there, and time was slipping away. He turned to Rex. "We've got part of it, boy. It's something." He knelt, resting a hand on the dog's head. "You found the truth. Now we just need to finish it." Rex licked his wrist, tail twitching once, a silent acknowledgement of the mission ahead. Then, through the roar of the rain, came another sound, faint but unmistakable. Sirens. Daniel looked toward the warehouse entrance, eyes narrowing. Red and blue lights flashed in the distance, growing brighter with every second. "They found us!" He grabbed the recorder and stuffed it into his jacket. "We've got to move." Rex barked once, low, ready. Daniel ran to the back of the warehouse, boots slapping against wet concrete. He knew there was a service tunnel behind the loading bay, an old access route leading to the rail tracks. If they could make it there, they might have a chance. But then, a voice boomed through a loudspeaker outside. "Daniel Harris, this is Captain Reynolds. Stop and surrender now." The words hit him like a bullet. Reynolds. The one man he still respected. The man who'd once told him, "Sometimes instincts see what logic can't." He stopped. Rex turned back, eyes locked on him, sensing the hesitation. Daniel's mind spun, in chaos. He could walk out there, hand over the recording, and pray Reynolds believed him. Or trust his instincts one last time, and finish what he'd started. He looked at Rex. The dog stood still, rain dripping from his fur, waiting. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We're not done yet." Rex barked once, sharp, resolute. They slipped through the rear door just as the front of the warehouse flooded with lights and shouting voices. Daniel glanced back once, just long enough to see Reynolds's silhouette in the storm. A pang of guilt twisted in his chest. He wasn't betraying the badge. He was fighting for what it stood for. He turned away and ran into the dark, Rex close at his side. The storm swallowed them whole, and somewhere within that thunder, the truth whispered, a truth that refused to stay buried any longer. The rain fell harder now, each drop slashing through the air like cold glass. The storm had swallowed the world in sound. Sirens, shouting, thunder, the static crackle of radios. Red and blue lights flashed against the slick concrete walls of the abandoned warehouse, turning the scene into something surreal, half war zone, half tragedy. Daniel stood just inside the open doorway, breathing hard, soaked to the bone. His hands trembled around the small, soaked doll he held tight against his chest. Beside him, Rex stood still, body coiled, eyes sharp, as if he understood everything that was about to happen. Outside, police cars surrounded the building, headlights cutting through sheets of rain. Officers crouched behind their doors, weapons drawn, and standing at the center of it all was Captain Reynolds, rain dripping down his hat brim, his voice carrying through the loudspeaker. "Daniel Harris!" His tone was firm but heavy, as though each word cost him something. "You're surrounded. Don't make this worse. Step out slowly with your hands where we can see them." Daniel exhaled shakily. "He's here," he murmured to Rex. "Reynolds is here." Rex's ears twitched, eyes never leaving the light beyond the doorway. Daniel's grip tightened on the doll. Inside it lay the truth, the voice recording that proved his innocence. But to everyone out there, it was just another lie, another piece of chaos in a case already poisoned by doubt. He took one last look at Rex, his voice breaking. "We're walking out together, okay? No matter what happens." Rex blinked slowly, then pressed his head briefly against Daniel's leg, as if to say, "Always." Daniel stepped into the rain. The downpour hit him like a wall, drenching him instantly. He raised his free hand high, the other clutching the doll. Rex followed, body low but calm, leash taut in Daniel's grasp. The light from the patrol cars flared across them, and for a moment, the two figures, man and dog, looked almost mythic against the storm. "Don't shoot!" Reynolds shouted to his team. "Hold fire! He's coming out!" Daniel's voice strained over the wind. "Captain, I can explain. You have to listen to me." Reynolds stepped forward cautiously, motioning for the others to lower their weapons. "Dan, it's over. You've got half the department chasing you through a thunderstorm. Whatever this is, we'll sort it out. But you have to put that thing down." "I can't!" Daniel shouted back. His words cracked through the rain like lightning. "This is the missing evidence. The confession. It was in the doll, Reynolds. He hid it here all along." A ripple of confusion moved through the officers. Some glanced at each other. Others whispered, uncertain. The doll looked like nothing more than a soggy toy, a ridiculous centerpiece to a night gone mad. Reynolds frowned. "Dan, come on. You're exhausted. Let's talk inside. Drop the doll. Let me take Rex." The moment he said it, Rex stiffened, teeth bared in a silent warning. The leash went taut in Daniel's hand. One of the younger officers stepped forward, his voice hard over the storm. "Sir, let us disarm him. He's unstable." Reynolds hesitated. No, wait. But it was too late. The officer lunged forward, grabbing for the doll. Rex moved first. The growl that tore from his chest wasn't loud, but it was deep, primal, filled with warning. He lunged between Daniel and the officer, snapping his jaws inches from the man's arm. Mud splashed beneath their boots. The officer stumbled back, shouting, "He's attacking! He's gone wild!" "Stand down!" Reynolds barked, but panic was faster than command. Another officer swung his baton, a flash of motion, the crack of impact, and Rex cried out. Daniel's scream ripped through the storm. "No!" He dropped to his knees beside his partner. The doll fell from his hand, landing in the mud. Rex's body hit the ground hard, a stun baton mark searing his side, smoke rising faintly from the wet fur. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes, God, those eyes, remained locked on Daniel. "Stay with me, boy," Daniel begged, cradling Rex's head. "Please, stay." The rain fell harder, mixing with tears he didn't bother to hide. Around them, chaos blurred, voices, orders, confusion, but Daniel didn't hear any of it. The world had narrowed to the trembling body in his arms. Then Rex moved, slowly, painfully. He shifted his weight, dragging himself forward an inch, then another. "Easy, buddy, don't—" Daniel started, but stopped when he realized where Rex was going. The doll. Rex crawled toward it, body shaking, breath ragged. Every inch forward took everything he had left. The officers froze, watching in stunned silence. The dog reached the doll, placed one paw gently over it, and looked up, first at Daniel, then at Reynolds. His chest rose and fell once, twice. Then he stilled, holding the doll close beneath his paw, refusing to let it go. The sight silenced everything. No orders, no shouting, just the sound of rain hitting the pavement, and the distant rumble of thunder. Reynolds stepped forward, expression breaking. He knelt beside them, the officer he'd mentored, the dog he'd once dismissed, and saw, truly saw, what loyalty looked like. "Dear God," he whispered. He wasn't protecting the man. He was protecting the truth. Daniel looked up, eyes blazing through tears. "You see it now, don't you?" He knew from the start. Reynolds nodded slowly, voice heavy with regret. "I see it. I see it." He turned to his men. "Get an ambulance here, now." Two officers rushed forward, kneeling beside Rex. "He's breathing," one said quickly. "Weak, but breathing." Daniel brushed the rain from Rex's fur, voice shaking. "You did it, partner. You held on. Just a little longer, okay?" Rex blinked once, slow, deliberate, the same look he'd given him on their first day together. The medics lifted the stretcher, and Daniel refused to let go of the leash until the very last second. Reynolds placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll get to the bottom of this. I promise you." Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the muddy doll lying where Rex had guarded it, soaked through, but still intact. The secret inside had nearly cost them everything, but it was finally in the light. As the ambulance doors closed and its siren wailed into the night, Reynolds stood motionless, drenched in rain and guilt. Around him, officers lowered their weapons, eyes lowered in silent respect. The storm began to fade, thunder rolling farther away. In its place came the heavy stillness that only follows sacrifice, the kind that leaves everyone changed. For Daniel, it wasn't victory, It wasn't vindication. It was something deeper, something raw and wordless. It was the moment he realized that loyalty doesn't need orders, and truth sometimes speaks through the quiet heart of a wounded dog. And even as the rain washed the blood from the concrete, Rex's paw print remained, pressed into the mud beside the doll, a mark of devotion that no storm could ever erase. The next morning, the storm was gone. In its wake, the city felt unnaturally still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The precinct that had once turned cold to Daniel Harris now buzzed with quiet unease. No one said much. No one met anyone's eyes. The events of the night before had spread fast. Whispers about the chase, about the wounded dog, about the doll that might hold the truth. Inside the forensics lab, time seemed to slow. The steady hum of machines filled the sterile air. Rainwater still streaked Daniel's jacket, but he hadn't changed. He stood motionless beside Captain Reynolds, watching as two technicians huddled over a computer, their faces lit by the glow of the screen. On the table beside them lay the small, muddy doll, its fabric torn, stuffing exposed, the evidence tag freshly attached. It looked fragile, almost pitiful. Yet every eye in the room knew it carried the weight of a man's future. "Playback's corrupted," one technician muttered, adjusting the volume. "We recovered about 90% of the data, but the last section's tricky, buried under interference." "Can you fix it?" Reynolds asked. The technician hesitated. "Maybe. Depends how bad the degradation is." Daniel didn't speak. His gaze stayed locked on the recorder lying beside the doll, its metal casing scratched but intact. He could still hear the suspect's voice in his mind, that taunting tone, the half-finished sentence. "The one who told me to," then silence. He clenched his fists. He'd been so close to clearing his name last night, but fate had stopped him one sentence too soon. Now everything hung on whether this machine could finish what he'd started. Reynolds studied him from the corner of his eye. The captain's expression carried the heaviness of guilt. Guilt for doubting him, for letting things spiral this far. But there was something else in his gaze. Resolve. "Whatever comes out of that recorder," Reynolds said quietly, "we'll see it through. You have my word." Daniel nodded once, not trusting his voice. The technician typed a final command. "All right, we're rolling." A hiss of static filled the speakers. The room tensed. Then, slowly, the distortion faded, replaced by the suspect's voice, clearer this time, sharper. "Think the cop's clean, but he's not. He's the one who logged the evidence. Perfect fall guy. When this blows up, they'll go after him first." Daniel's stomach twisted. Hearing it again still cut deep. But then, the missing piece. The static lifted, revealing the rest of the sentence. "The one who told me to set it up is Sergeant Vance. He's got connections. Internal. Said we'd both walk if I played my part. Guess that's my insurance." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. A chill swept through the room. Reynolds's face hardened. He didn't speak right away. He didn't have to. The silence said everything. Sergeant Vance, one of their own. Trusted. Respected. The officer who'd led the audit that got Daniel suspended. The man who'd signed off the report, claiming the evidence was missing. Daniel's heart hammered. "I knew it," he whispered. "He was there that night. He handled the evidence after me." Reynolds turned to the technician. Play it again. All of it. The recording played once more, uninterrupted. The room filled with the damning voice of the suspect, confessing not just to the kidnapping, but to the setup, the framing, the manipulation. Every word peeled back another layer of lies. When it ended, the last echo of static seemed to ring in their ears like judgment. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Reynolds broke the silence. "Get internal affairs down here. Now." An officer hurried out of the room. Daniel's legs felt weak. He braced himself against the table, staring at the doll. So small, so ordinary. That ridiculous toy had done what an entire department couldn't. It told the truth. He felt tears sting his eyes. He didn't bother to hide them. Reynolds placed a hand on his shoulder. "You were right, Harris. From the start." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I wasn't. Rex was." The words came out like a confession of their own. His voice cracked on the dog's name. The memory of last night rushed back. The flash of the baton, Rex's cry, the sight of him crawling toward the doll despite the pain. "Where is he?" Daniel asked quietly. "In the clinic," Reynolds said softly. "They're doing everything they can. The vets say he's strong, but the hit was bad. He hasn't woken up yet." Daniel nodded, jaw tight. The victory of truth tasted hollow with that weight in his chest. He stared at the flickering monitor again, at the proof of his innocence playing on loop, and felt no triumph, only exhaustion. Reynolds straightened, addressing the others. "From this moment on, Officer Daniel Harris is cleared of all accusations. Make it official. The real culprit will answer for this." The officers nodded, murmuring to one another, relief and shame blending in their faces. Some couldn't meet Daniel's eyes. He didn't care. The only thing he wanted to see now was Rex. Reynolds gestured toward the door. "Go. He's in the medical wing. I'll handle things here." Daniel hesitated, then gave a quiet, grateful nod. "Thank you, Captain." As he turned to leave, Reynolds called after him. "Harris." Daniel stopped at the doorway. Reynolds looked at him, voice gentler now. "Sometimes instincts see what logic can't." Daniel gave a faint, broken smile. "You're right." And his instincts were better than all of ours combined. He left the lab, walking down the familiar hallway that felt unfamiliar now, every sound sharper, every step heavier. Outside, dawn was breaking, the first light of morning seeping through rain-streaked windows. For the first time in days, Daniel was free. But freedom, without Rex, felt like standing in sunlight, after losing your shadow. As he reached the clinic doors, the sounds of machines and distant monitors filled his ears. He stopped for a moment, hand on the cold metal handle, and whispered, "Hang on, boy. The truth's out now. You can rest." Inside, the hum of life support equipment waited, and in that fragile silence between relief and grief, the bond between man and dog stood stronger than ever, proof that loyalty, once given, never dies. 3 days had passed since the storm. The city had returned to its rhythm, people going about their days, traffic humming, life pretending nothing had happened. But for Daniel Harris, time hadn't moved at all. Every hour felt suspended between hope and fear. Every minute an echo of the night he thought he might lose everything. The small veterinary clinic tucked behind the precinct was quiet that morning. The sterile smell of antiseptic hung in the air, softened by the faint scent of rain drifting in through a cracked window. In the far corner of the recovery room, beneath a tangle of wires and soft white bandages, lay Rex. His breathing was shallow but steady. The fur along his side was shaved, a line of stitches running down where the stun baton had struck him. Machines hummed softly beside the bed, their rhythmic beeps marking time Daniel counted by heart. Daniel sat beside him, still in his wrinkled shirt, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. His hand rested gently on Rex's paw, warm, solid, alive. "Hey, partner," he whispered, voice breaking in the stillness. "You're tougher than all of us put together. You know that?" Rex didn't stir, but his ears twitched faintly at the sound. Daniel leaned closer, words trembling from somewhere deep in his chest. "You didn't guard a toy," he murmured. "You guarded the truth. You saved my life. Again." He swallowed hard. "I spent 15 years protecting people, chasing justice, thinking I understood loyalty. But you showed me what it really means." Outside, the rain had stopped completely. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the room in pale gold. It fell across Rex's fur, catching the faint rise and fall of his chest, making him look almost ethereal, half spirit, half soldier. The door creaked open behind them. Captain Reynolds stepped in quietly, hat in hand. His face, normally carved from stone, was soft today, older, heavier. "How's he doing?" he asked. Daniel exhaled. "Fighting." Reynolds nodded, eyes fixed on the dog. "We owe him more than we can ever repay." Behind him, footsteps followed. The room filled. Familiar faces, officers from every unit. They lined the walls in silence, hats removed, heads bowed. Reynolds turned to Daniel. "We wanted to do this here, where he can see it." Daniel looked up in confusion. "Do what?" The captain stepped forward, holding a small velvet box. When he opened it, the light caught on polished silver, a medal of valor engraved with Rex's name. "For bravery beyond measure," Reynolds said softly. "For loyalty that didn't waver, when ours did." Daniel's eyes blurred. He stood, voice trembling. "He wouldn't care about medals, sir." Reynolds smiled faintly. "No, but maybe we need them, to remind ourselves what loyalty really looks like." He pinned the medal gently to Rex's harness. The soft click of metal echoed through the silence like a prayer. Then, the smallest footsteps. Emma, the little girl from the case, walked in holding something in her tiny hands. A new doll, bright blue eyes, a red ribbon tied neatly around its waist. Her mother lingered near the doorway, watching quietly as the child approached. Emma stopped beside Rex, looking at him with awe and sadness only a child could hold. "Mom said he's the reason I'm safe," she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her. "That's right, sweetheart." He made sure the truth didn't get lost. The little girl smiled softly and placed the doll beside Rex's paw. "This one's for him," she said, "so he won't be lonely anymore." The room went still. Even the machines seemed to hush. And in that soft rhythm, between life and memory, the story of a man and his dog found its ending. Not in glory, not in victory, but in something far greater. Faith, love, truth. Fade out to the echo of Daniel's voice. Sometimes the truth hides in the smallest hearts. You know, stories like this remind us why dogs, especially German shepherds, hold such a sacred place in our hearts. Their loyalty isn't something you train into them. It's something they give freely, out of pure love and trust. Rex didn't just protect evidence. He protected truth, faith, and the bond that can exist between a person and their dog. If you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt that quiet understanding, that wordless promise, you already know what I mean. These animals teach us about devotion, forgiveness, and what it means to show up, even when the world turns cold. If you'd like to explore something that helps you deepen that connection with your own dog, there's a resource I think you'd enjoy. No pressure, just something gentle to help you understand them a little more, the way they always seem to understand us. Take your time. Sit with your dog tonight. Let them rest their head on your hand. Sometimes, love doesn't need words, just presence.